The Wild One, Legends of Theodore, Chapter 7, Sibel Toll. The night was quiet and still as Sorrel slipped through the trees. Since night had just fallen, the lights were still on in many buildings, including the guild building. That might make things difficult, but looking at something wasn't illegal, right? And if it was open, he had every right to enter. Sorrel shoved his justifications out of his mind as he approached the building. Should he boldly go through the front door? That made him nervous, but sneaking in could be worse. There was another problem. He didn't know where to start looking for the bag in question. He closed his eyes and recalled the room that Grace had led him to. That seemed like a good place to start. The building was certainly still open, but there was next to no traffic going in and out. If he entered through the front door, all attention would be on him immediately. He lapped the outside, careful to avoid any windows or eyes of anyone passing by. There was a back door that led to some kind of training yard. He could hear people practicing in it, so that was out. There was a side access right next to the street with a dumpster of sorts beside it. Seemed like some sort of employee entrance. It could work, but was pretty far from where he needed to go. As he got closer to the section where the room would be, he noticed an open window on the second floor. It was more than big enough for him to fit through, and it offered an easy escape. No point in standing there. Sorrel decided to go for it. He backed up a few paces before leaping onto the wall, using his momentum to get just high enough for him to latch onto the window ledge. He was conscious of every sound he made as he moved. Once again, he reminded himself that all he was doing was taking a peek. Sorrel carefully raised himself so he could peer inside the room. It appeared to be some sort of office. It was empty and the door was closed. He also noticed the very object he had been seeking sitting on the desk. No way. It was hard to decide if he was lucky or if this was some kind of trap. He could drop down, but the sound might be loud and alert those outside. Besides, the bag was right there. Just one little peek. As long as he didn't take it, the trap probably wouldn't be triggered, right? The slightest rustles of his own clothes seemed to echo through his ears as he pulled himself through the window. Here goes. He felt the adrenaline rushing through him as he reached his hand out to touch the bag. Maybe he could tell what material it was made of. "It's a nice bag, isn't it?" a man's voice said from behind him. The door was open, but he hadn't heard a thing. The man seemed calm, amused even. He was tall, almost seeming to tower over Sorrel. He wore mostly brown, save for the black shirt under his vest. Sorrel's eyes landed for a moment on the well-defined muscles that showed beneath the man's short sleeves. Not someone he could overpower for sure. He met eyes with the man again. They were green, but a lighter shade than Jazz's. The man's hair was also brown, as if to match his clothes. "It is," Sorrel answered, lowering his hand as naturally as he could, trying to ignore his racing heart. He needed to be calm. He wasn't guilty. He hadn't stolen anything, and he hadn't been going to. Probably. The man walked over to the bag, scooping it up and plopping it into Sorrel's hands. "You wanted to check it out, right? I'm afraid I can't let you take it, but there's no harm in letting you look," he told Sorrel with a knowing smile. Something about the man's gaze gave Sorrel the feel of prey being hunted, but he tried his best to ignore it. After all, he had just been given permission to do exactly what he came here for. Unfortunately, before he could stop himself, a question popped out. "Who are you?" he demanded in an accusatory tone. The man's smile widened. "I thought you would know since you're standing in my office," he began, "but since it seems you used unconventional means to enter, you likely missed the nameplate by the door. I am Sibel Toll." Sibel Toll, the founder of the Boleus Guild and the one who invented magic? The bag suddenly seemed a lot less interesting than the man standing before him. Would he teach Sorrel how to invent magic? "Did you invent this?" Sorrel asked instead. "I did," Sibel confirmed. "I wouldn't put my hand inside if I were you." Sorrel's hand, that had been creeping towards the opening of the bag, shot back lightning fast. Was it trapped? That was so cool! Maybe he'd made it so no one but him could access what was inside. Maybe others could only put things in but not take them out. "Can I have it?" "No," Sibel interrupted, and took the bag back. "But I could show you how to make your own. Or you could invent your own version." "My own version?" Sorrel asked. "Yes. You have the magic potential to fulfill any magic you create, Sibel told him. Wouldn't it be more fun to make it your own rather than using my recipe? It did sound more fun. In fact, he already had ideas flying through his mind. The bag seemed kind of inconvenient, so what if he attached it to a pocket? But where would everything go? Portal magic could definitely be adjusted for this, but he needed a place to put it. Cybele smiled as he watched Sorrel sink deep into thought. Feel free to ask me if you have any questions, he prompted. Questions? He had so many questions, but what was okay to ask? Cybele had caught him sneaking about, so he had to be careful not to arouse any suspicion. A safe place, Sorrel decided. How do I make one of those? A safe place? Cybele repeated and thought about it. That depends on how safe you want it, how hidden you want it, and how large you need it. I can start small, but I need it to be hidden, Sorrel said. I guess I can work on the other over time as well? Cybele nodded. Then it shouldn't be too hard. You live in a forest, right? Forests lend well to illusion magic. Use that to disguise your entrance. If you really want it hidden, hide it in existing terrain or underground. You can use magic to reinforce the ground above to maintain sturdy and sound. Sorrel took a minute to process everything he had just said. Illusion magic? Magic to reinforce the ground? At that point, he might as well just magic the whole thing into existence. Actually, he might be able to do that. Cybele said he could create magic, right? Thank you, Sorrel said, and went over to the window as if it was the most natural exit to take. I'll tell you how it goes later. I've got some things to try. Cybele chuckled to himself as he watched Sorrel jump out the window and take off running down the path into the forest. First things first, Sorrel needed to scope out a spot. Then he needed to test magic on a smaller scale. Then pockets? He definitely needed to find out which of his clothes had the most convenient pockets. The excitement raced through him as his thoughts continued to swirl. This was why he had followed Rowena, he decided. If he had continued living as he had been, he never would have had this opportunity.